Hey guys, how's it going? Gareth James here for MTTPokerschool.com. Joined today by someone who last time he was on didn't have $1 million in live earnings, but now he does. Please welcome Mr. Dara O'Kearney. How you doing, Dara?
Not doing great. I'm struggling with a cold that I picked up in the Dusk Till Dawn petri dish, but yeah, feeling good otherwise.
Okay, well, yeah, the laugh was about the petri dish rather than you being sick. Yeah, you're not the only person I know that's been a bit poorly after that event. I don't know what we can do to improve hygiene standards at these events that lead to us getting poorly, but yeah, if anyone's got any ideas, maybe comment down below.
Yeah, there's probably not too much given that you're cramming 1,000 people into what even the owner described as a shed in Nottingham.
Yeah, I read that. Yeah, that's a great quote. Okay, so the reason I wanted to get you on, obviously you are, well, maybe not obviously to people watching this, but you final tabled the UK Millions event, or Millions UK Party Poker event at Dusk Till Dawn. How was that experience?
It was quite a bizarre experience. It was, in very many respects, it was a very unusual tournament for me. First of all, because of the structure, and I'd played similar structures before, I kind of went into the tournament, I sat down, not thinking, here we go. It was more like, here we go, draft one, because I was expecting to do plenty of bullets in this tournament.
Right.
Played the second day, won, and unexpectedly had a really smooth day one. Just basically, I don't even remember any super big pots apart from one early on where I knocked out short stack Jack Salter. So I moved from 1 million to just under 3 million chips with absolutely no setbacks, no major pots. Very unusual day one for me. Came back for day two, much different day two. Towards the end of day two, I found myself back at starting stack, having just literally gone straight line down more or less the whole day. Okay. I got a late double up to get me up to 2 million, but at that stage I was well below average.
Yeah.
Day three got off to a really good start. I more or less quadrupled my stack, one full double up, and then I picked up lots of small pots. So I was actually in good shape on the bubble, and I was sat beside Doobie Fish.
Oh, cool. Excellent.
Who was, or at least should have been, stalling into the money. And I had a few interesting hands there, one of which I posted on Share My Pair, which generated a lot of discussion, and we talk about in the chip race. But yeah, I got through the day from what I remember with about 7 million, which was a bit below average. And then for the rest of the tournament, it was basically just clinging for dear life. I got a message from Maria Konnikova after the tournament saying well done, that she was rooting for me. And I said, yeah, it was a kind of a surreal experience because for the last day and a half, I kind of felt like I was in a different tournament from the others because they all had so much more chips.
Yeah.
It almost looked like I'd sat down at the wrong table. So yeah, it was pretty much grimly hanging on, but like you're still obviously hoping that you'll get the spin on the final table. That didn't happen. Like the first time I was all in, I obviously bust. I was pretty card dead on the final table, so it was kind of a cameo appearance. But yeah, great experience. Very happy to get there on my first bullet as well, and great occasion. And it was a really sick final table. So even to be there as a bit actor felt pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, it was great to watch. Yeah, it was a really stacked final table. And I think anyone who knows you was rooting for you. So it was good to see you on that final table. And it was a shame that you were so card dead, and it kind of didn't do anything to dispel the myth of you being an old nit.
Indeed not. Yeah, I think a lot of people expected me to ladder to second, which is what's happened.
That's fair.
I was sorry to disappoint Meryl on this occasion. Yeah, I was really happy with the people who came out. I pretty sure I had the biggest rail and certainly the most vocal rail. Special shout out to Diva Byrne, who got out a bit early and got a train up from London, even though she was feeling poorly as well. Barry Carter and his wife. There were lots of people. It was really good. I'm just sorry that basically my appearance on the final table lasted less than the train ride, but it was still great to see them there.
Yeah, shout out to them for sure. Okay, well, I think today we want to look at a couple of spots from that final table. One hand that you were at the table for, and one that you weren't. Pretty interesting that both of these hands are Ace King versus Queens. So let's dive straight into the first one. So we're playing 8-handed, and this was the hand. So you were under the gun in this hand and had folded. And Tom Hall picks up ace king of spades in the hijack and shoves for 34.5 million. Folds to Alex Foxen in the small blind, who has pocket queens, and he calls. And then Angelou-Konstas finds ace king in a big blind and decides to shove. The action's back on Foxen, and he reluctantly folds the pocket queens. So yeah, a very interesting hand straight away. What are your thoughts at this stage?
Yeah, it was a super interesting hand. Obviously, I was there in real time for it happened, and I got quite excited when Tom shoved and Alex called, because I was really short stacked at the time, and it potentially meant a ladder.
Yeah.
So I went over to talk to Diva to tell her what was happening, because the rail was quite distant, and she was beside Chrissy Bicknell, Alex's girlfriend, so she was quite interested as well. So I was telling them, and then we looked back and we saw that the Greek was actually in the tank as well.
Right.
And then we saw him shove. So now the hand is super interesting. Now I thought maybe we'll even get the double ladder here. Foxen tanked for so long that I decided I would take advantage of the time and go for a toilet break. And by the time I got back, the two guys were all in, and I was very disappointed to see two ace kings.
Yeah.
Which meant no ladder, and I knew that Foxen had folded, but it was clear that Foxen had folded a big hand, and obviously we found out afterwards it was queens. I was pretty stunned, I have to say, that he folded queens. My initial instinct at the time was, if I had been in that spot with queens, the way the stacks were set up, I mean, I wouldn't have loved it, but I would have just shoved myself, knowing then that the big blind has to be super tight. It's obviously a disaster if he happens to wake up with kings or aces.
Yeah.
But I just felt that queens was too strong to call and then fold. I mean, he put out a decent amount of his stack.
Yeah.
And I also felt that the hand wasn't strong enough to call, hoping to induce a shove, because I didn't think there'd be enough worse hands that would shove that would make that profitable. So the way I would have played the hand, had I thought about it, would have been to just shove in his seat. If I had flatted somehow and it came back to me, I think I would have decided the queens was just too strong to fold, and I probably would have made the call. Now, I said that to my rail afterwards, and there was a lot of debate. Some people said, no, you can't possibly call with queens there. You're going to be in terrible shape against the range. And then other people were saying, no, queens is like the worst hand that will call, but it's still a call.
Yeah.
So I was very interested to see what the tools had to say about it.
Yeah, so we'll dive into that in just a second. But just to sort of reiterate that it's such a disaster for Foxen if he gets it in here and loses with you on 15 million, which was about 6 big blinds at the time. So that's definitely got to factor into his decision. And if it was a call and he chose to fold, I think, that's the biggest reason for him wanting to fold in this spot, right?
I think so, but then as a slight counter to that, it was a very top-heavy payout structure.
Right. Okay.
And he's obviously folding away quite a lot of equity when he folds queens. It's not like he's guaranteed, a huge payday if he folds. He would have gone back to being one of the average stacks, or he did, in fact, because he did fold. So yeah, I mean, ICM obviously always plays a factor. I just didn't think it was a big enough factor in this occasion.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, I'm open to correction on that.
Okay. Well, let's fire up HRC and have a look. Okay, so what we've done here is an advanced hand in HRC that has Tom shoving and then gives Foxen the option to either call or jam himself. And this is what the calculators spat out to begin with. So this is a range that off air we felt was perhaps maybe a bit too wide. And obviously that's then going to have an effect on Foxen's calling ranges and jamming ranges. I say that in the first instance, but maybe he believes Tom is actually shoving wider than you think he is, or that we think he is. So that's maybe something we can talk about in a minute.
Yeah, I think we shouldn't necessarily adjust Foxen's range, because the reason why I think Tom's range is tighter is I've played more hands online with Tom than any other player.
Right. Gotcha.
In my career, I played over 200,000 hands against Tom.
Yeah.
So I think I have a very, very clear idea of Tom's ranges. Foxen obviously has nothing like the same history with Tom, and probably just assumes he's sticking close to Nash.
Yeah.
So obviously if he knew that Tom's ranges were tighter, he would adjust his own range, but I think he didn't know that in game. So I suspect Alex's range would be probably as wide as we see there on the screen.
Okay, cool. So when he does call, the big blind can go ahead and jam the hands here, tens plus ace queen, and then we can see that when it folds back to Foxen, you can see here that queens is in green, but it's not highlighted because actually the program believes that shoving queens is going to be much better in this situation. So it doesn't actually appear in the calling range to begin with. It's in the rejam range. So that's why it's unhighlighted, but it is still green. So if it was in that range, it would still be profitable.
Okay, so basically what we're saying is HRC is saying that he should have shoved his hand in the first place, but if he does call with it, then it's a profitable call when the big blind reshoves.
Yeah, if everyone's ranges are as they are displayed in the program. Yeah.
Right. Okay. But then Tom's range, we believe, is a bit tighter.
Yeah, absolutely. So what we've done is we've gone in and we've adjusted Tom's range in this next hand. Just exactly the same situation. I can show you that now. And to something that we think is a little bit more realistic.
Yeah, we talked about this before we came on. Some of these are close. Like I think it's possible he shoves hands like ace 10 off, king queen off, maybe king 10 suited, those types of hands. But on balance, I think probably not. So I think this is certainly the tightest range we can give Tom. I can't imagine he's any tighter than this.
No. Okay, and as we just go back to looking at the EV, the reason why all of these are in green now is because we've tightened up this range, which affects everyone else's range. And as soon as that happens, then Tom's range can actually get wider. But we know that in practice, that's not what's happening here. And it's the highlighted hands that we believe he's shoving here. So we then can go through to Foxen's strategy, and you can see again he has two options, and we've locked these as well to all of the hands that we believe he was going to play in this situation. And because we don't think that he's going to adjust for Tom playing or Tom shoving tighter in this situation, we've still got exactly the same percentage of hands here that he would call with. And we debated a little bit as to whether or not we thought that he would just call with a lot of those hands rather than calling with some and shoving with others. What are your thoughts there, Dara?
Yeah, I mean, it's really hard to know whether he is splitting his range between shoves and calls. Given the fact that if he is splitting his range, queens is supposed to be in the shoving range, and he actually called with it, I guess that's the biggest indicator we have that maybe he just calls his entire range and then he allows himself to make a decision when he gets shoved on.
Yeah.
So yeah, if I had to bet on it, I would assume he's flatting his entire range, but we're not 100% sure on that.
Yeah, and we can already see that there are a number of hands in this range, like ace jack off, ace queen off, ace jack suited, and nines, eights, and sevens, that are not profitable if Tom is shoving this tighter range that we believe he is.
Yeah, that stands to reason, because I think there's a lot of Tom's range in terms of hands that those hands dominate. A lot of those hands are the hands that have disappeared out of Tom's range. So suddenly his worst aces become much less profitable.
Yeah. So when he does call, we now get the big blind's range of being tens plus ace queen suited, ace king off. Do you think that's reasonable?
Yeah, I'm not sure about tens. I think, and I mean, we can see that tens is more or less break even. Jacks, I think jacks plus for sure, and ace king off, ace queen suited, they all look right. Yeah, I mean, from what I played with Ioannis, his pre-flop ranges seem to be pretty much spot on. So I'd say the safest thing we can do is just assume that he has this range.
Okay, and then we can see what Foxen's supposed to do. And you can see that with the pocket queens, it is really, really close. And kings plus, very, very profitable, but queens, not so much.
Yeah, it's slightly worse than break even now. But again, this is assuming that Tom's range is tighter, which we don't think Foxen was assuming.
Yeah.
So I imagine if we went back to giving Tom the wider range, which the spot that Foxen thought he was in,
yeah,
what he was actually in, it's kind of messy up. But I imagine queens flops back to being a call. I mean, this pretty much shows why there was so much debate about the spot afterwards, because it's more or less on the line.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it really boils down to what our assumptions about the range are.
Yeah, if we just go back to the original range, we can see, like we said, that Queens was going to be a call if it was in his original calling range versus the original shove. So, yeah, it's very, very close. Anything else to add, Dara?
No, I mean, it's obviously an awful spot to find yourself in. I think he could have avoided the spot just by shoving himself.
Yeah.
And then Ioannis, I think, would have tank folded his ace king.
I wonder if we can do that, actually. So we can unlock this range and actually give him no hands that he flats. I mean, this could be wrong as well. And instead, we just say that we think that he should shove all of the hands that he wants to play. And okay, so now it wants him to just go ahead and shove tens plus, ace queen suited, ace king off himself. And at that point, then the big blind can actually only get it in with kings plus, and ace king would be a fold in his shoes.
Yeah, that was kind of my feeling in game, and it makes sense to me when I look at the solution now.
Cool. All right. Well, let's have a look at the other hand. Okay, so in this next hand, Tom Hall raises to 8 million at 2 million, 4 million with a 4 million ante. He raises to 8 million from early position, and Foxen 3-bets to 23 million on the button. And John Haigh shoves for 106.5 million, which is about 26 big blinds. Hall calls and Foxen overcalls. So really, really interesting spot. My immediate thought about this was I wasn't too sure about Tom Hall's call, but I was fairly confident that Foxen's overcall with the ace king is not going to be very good, mainly because from the number of spots I've run in HRC, where you see that ace king being the third player into the pot in a high ICM situation is usually not a call. Would that be your assessment, like your immediate assessment before we run the numbers, Dara?
Yeah, I agree completely with that. Ace king is a hand which goes down in value. It's much better heads up than multi-way.
Yeah.
Often it's card sharing with one or both of the other thing, and as the third player in, you're almost never dominating both hands, and yeah, you're quite often card sharing. So it makes it's a particularly bad hand to call when two players are already all in. I did feel like Haigh was an unusual player. He actually played really well on the final. All the time that I played with him in the tournament, but he was certainly tight about putting all of his chips in, and we saw that early on the final table when he 3-bet ace king after the bat opened under the gun and actually folded to a 4-bet.
Yeah.
So that was kind of his tendency. So I think his range is going to be considerably tighter than most people's range would be. So yeah, I was very similar to you. I wasn't sure at all about Tom's call, but I was pretty clear that Alex's call wasn't correct.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, it's a pretty interesting situation given that we just looked at the other hand that Foxen folded the queens. Now, obviously, there wasn't a 6 big blind stack at the table anymore, but it's still, a huge chunk of Foxen's stack in this situation to be the third player in here. So yeah, pretty interesting that there's sort of maybe a lack of consistency. I don't know in this in the decision making.
Yeah, I think sometimes there's a thing which I call mistake tilt, which is if you feel you've made a mistake in an earlier hand, that can bleed into another hand and actually cause you to make a mistake in the other direction. Where if you thought you made a bad fold, you might actually make a bad call because you don't want to make two bad folds. That's something I do see quite a bit of, even among top class players. So maybe that was a factor here.
Yeah, I definitely think that could be the case here. I mean, he's seen both the ace kings turned over when he did fold the queens, and knowing that he could have been sitting there with a huge stack right now, because hashtag results, he would have won and would have eliminated Tom in the process with the pocket queens earlier. I think he's probably there is a pretty big chance that he's deciding to call here because of that what he might perceive as a bad fold earlier on.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think just as a pure poker player, when the two hands go over and you fold the queens and you see that they both have ace king, you're going to be disappointed even before the board runs out, because that's an amazing situation for you to have queens against two ace kings.
Yeah.
And as it happened, he would have won the hand as well. So like as a human being, you're also thinking, wow, I could have that massive pot could have been mine, and I could have been massive chip leader. So I'm not sure how much that affected him mentally, but it's certainly possible it was a factor.
Okay, well let's run the spot again in HRC. As we're looking at it here, you can see we've gone in and we've edited everybody's range, because HRC doesn't do a very good job of working out ranges just in general. I mean, it's very good at doing like 3-bet shove ranges or a simple push fold, but when we just give it free reign to come up with pre-flop opening ranges and 3-bet ranges and 4-bet ranges, it doesn't do a very good job. And so that's why we've gone in and we've edited the ranges here. So when we see that it's all green here, this is because we've gone in and we've tightened up everyone's range. So as soon as Tom's range gets tighter for opening, Foxen's range becomes tighter, and the Haig's range as well becomes much tighter. So suddenly every hand could be opened in this particular model, but we know that that's just not realistic and isn't the case. So we've gone for a range of 7s plus, suited broadways, ace-8 suited plus, ace-10 off, and king-queen off. When we were discussing this before we started the recording, we felt like we had a much better idea of what Tom's opening range was and less of an idea of what Foxen's 3-bet range was. Is that fair to say, Dara?
Yeah, that's totally fair to say. I think I have a fairly good idea of Tom's ranges in most spots. I haven't played as much with Alex. I've played with him a bit online, but not as much. And I think it's fair to say he seems more of he's a wilder player, let's say, than Tom.
Yeah.
Tom has very solid ranges in every spot, whereas Alex seems to do a lot of low frequency plays at what appears like quite a high frequency. So it's much more difficult to get an idea of Alex's ranges.
Yeah. Okay. So let's just open this up. So we originally thought we'd be raising 3-betting jacks plus ace king for value, ace queen off as a kind of bluff, but knowing that I guess Tom could flat with dominated hands, but probably unlikely. But it just does. It's a great hand in terms of blockers, so it blocks Tom from having ace king, aces, and queens. And then we've given him all the suited aces below ace-10 suited that we feel like he might flat. So yeah, we just wanted to throw out that this could be some way off, but I don't think it's going to affect the result too much. But yeah, we've thrown it out there, and we think that he might be 3-betting 10s and 9s at some frequency as well. Do you want to add anything to that, Dara?
Yeah, I think if you look at the bottom there, you can see this is 6.6% of hands. That feels right in and around the kind of frequency I'd expect Alex to be 3-betting in this spot. So we could argue about individual hands. You know, maybe he chose some suited king X into the light range as well. We don't really know, but I think this is broadly speaking what his range looks like.
Yeah, I guess as well, like he's probably got the perception that Tom was playing fairly solid and fairly snug, so wouldn't be going out of his way to apply pressure in this situation. Do you think that's fair?
I think that's fair as well. Yeah, and Alex was playing a lot snugger than he had been on previous days as well. I think everybody was aware of the ICM of the occasion.
Okay, great stuff. So the final range then to look at is the big blinds range, and again, like all of these are in green because there's a huge difference between the range of hands that Tom opens and the range of hands that Alex 3-bets that they can actually call when he jams, if he is just jamming queens plus and ace king. So that's why everything's in green here. So it's probably best to look at a range like this instead. So we can see, we feel like his range, Haig's range in the big blind is queens plus and ace king. We're going to come on to some live reads in a minute. But for now, let's just see the results against this tight of a range. And we can see that Tom's only supposed to actually call with kings plus. And when Tom does call, Foxen's actually only supposed to call with aces in this spot. And you can see ace king off losing quite a lot of real dollar equity here. This suggests that both players made a mistake calling with ace king. What are your thoughts, Dara?
Yeah, Thomas was unclear on the spot in game from what I gather from talking to him afterwards, and he felt he might have made a mistake, but he took a considerable amount of time and he asked for a count, and he was studying Haigh and Foxen throughout the whole proceedings. He felt that Haigh, in terms of how long it took him to shove and also how he looked while Tom was tanking, he didn't look comfortable at all, and Tom was fairly confident that made the top of the range a lot less likely. That Haigh almost never had aces now because of that, and maybe had a bit less kings as well, so therefore ace king was actually going to be in okay shape. So I think that's what guided Tom's decision.
Okay. As we speculated before we ran the numbers, overcall from Foxen with the ace king is going to be pretty bad in this situation, and yeah, pocket kings might come as a surprise that pocket kings here would be a fold. And it's very similar to interestingly another of the final tablists, Antoine Labatt, who had that famous pocket kings hand where he perhaps should have folded on the final table bubble of the World Series of Poker main event this year. Yeah, very similar situation. Obviously, this is a little bit deeper. It's further into the final table. But again, it's a spot where the program's suggesting that Foxen should actually only call with aces.
Yeah, one of the things about ICM, when ICM is extreme, when there's no ICM, it's just a matter of deciding whether your hand is ahead of the range or is getting the correct price against the range that you think you're up against. The more extreme ICM becomes, the more that tends to break down. It's not just a matter of being ahead. You have to be sufficiently far ahead, and in this spot I think the reason why ace king is a fold in Tom's seat is just that even when ahead he's not going to be that far ahead, because he's not going to be dominating very much, if at all. And then similarly in Alex's spot, I mean, ace king might just about have the right chip price against both ranges, but it's just never going to be in slam dunk shape against both of them.
Yeah, for sure. So if we go in here and we look at the shoving range that Tom didn't think then that aces was in this range. I mean, do we want to include it at a low frequency or not?
Yeah, I think you have to put it as a low frequency. First of all, Haigh might be capable of reverse telling, or sometimes players are just look nervous when they're all in.
Yeah,
I mean,
for sure.
I think this was the first time that Haigh maybe had been all in the entire tournament for all of his chips, as opposed to all of somebody else's chips. And people just look nervous in those spots. So yeah, 25% and 50%, that looks about right to me.
Okay, well let's put that in and run the simulation again.
So ace king is still a fold.
Yeah, so ace king is still a fold, even if we take out the top of the range most of the time.
But it's a much smaller mistake.
Yes, for sure. But then given that Tom's still only supposed to get it in with kings plus, Alex can still only get it in here with the pocket aces. So it doesn't have a huge effect, but it's obviously, it just makes the call less bad or better, I guess.
Yeah, which I think was Tom's feeling, and given time to reflect it. I mean, we had to run these spots to be sure. Tom had to make a decision on the biggest final table of his life. Yeah. And he knew that it was a very close decision. So it's not surprising that he got slightly on the wrong side of a close decision. But yeah, his mistake, while it appears to be a mistake in the ranges that we've given, is a relatively minor mistake. Alex's overcall, no matter how he cut it, I think is a pretty big mistake.
If we believe then that Tom's going to be shoving slightly wider, then do you think this is more realistic of what Tom's shoving? Because obviously this range of aces is based on the fact that Tom should actually only go with kings plus. So if we make this range wider...
I mean, now that we know that Tom is going with ace king as well, then we do have to widen his range.
Yeah, and so you can see that suddenly queens and kings does become a call here. But ace king off definitely still wants to be a fold.
Yeah, and fairly significant, minus 1.61.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I think the big takeaway is that ace king is a really bad hand, calling it all in with when two players are already all in.
Yeah.
And ICM is extreme.
Absolutely, yeah. So as I said, the impact of ICM is so huge, then yeah, it just becomes a fold with ace king. Okay, let's wrap it up there. Dara, thank you so much for coming on. Congratulations again on such a great run in that tournament.
Pleasure as always. Thank you, Gareth.
And yeah, this has been Gareth James for MTTPokerschool.com signing off. I will talk to you soon. Bye-bye.